now.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Nithsdale Area Committee meeting of 12th of May. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available for public listening, and can remind members to follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off their video when you're not addressing the meeting. Should you wish to contribute to any item, you should write speak in the team chat function. You'll be invited to speak in order about new issues. Should your question or issue be raised by a previous speaker, please withdraw your request so that we can deal with the business as efficiently as possible. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting for any reason, can I remind you to either write leave in the Teams or let Tracy, Governance Officer, know, and then write join again. This will allow us to monitor the members that are present and ensure we remain quorate. Can we, and I also approve the remote participation of members. Can I have sediment and apologies, please, Tracy?
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. We've got 14 members present. I've got one apology from Councillor Charteris, and not present at the start of the meeting are Councillors Ferguson, Ronnie and Wood. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy. I understand Councillor Ferguson is at an IJB meeting but intends to join us, so hopefully we'll see Councillor Ferguson soon. Declarations of interest, members? It would appear that there are none. And then we move on to agenda item 3, the minute of the previous meeting on the 10th of March 2021. This is for approval. Members, are you content with the minute, and is this a true record of the meeting on the 10th of March?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, then we move on to agenda item number 4. Nithsdale Area Committee Discretionary Budget and Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Budget 2021-22, report by Community Planning and Engagement Manager. These are two separate and distinct budgets which have been allocated to this committee to determine how best to use them at area level. There are a few items for noting and also quite a few considerations in this report. Mainly, agreeing the key civic events and initiatives which are the priorities of this committee and the process for their allocation, the option for grant application process for the remaining budget after our priorities have been supported, the method we want to adopt to decide the tackling poverty and inequalities allocation to this committee, and Derek Hextall is available in Teams, and Wendy Jessen, I see both staff members here. Nice to see you this morning. Thanks very much for being present. Derek, do you have anything to add to your report?
Morning, Chair. No, nothing further to add. Happy to go to questions.
Thank you. And Wendy, do you have anything to add to your, well, not necessarily your report, but add to what Derek's had to say?
Great. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members. Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to 2.1, I'm happy to answer any queries that might come up in relation to the differences between the participatory budgeting process and the area committee funding process. And then again at 2.6, I'm happy to run through the proposed allocation of the funding if it goes down the route of area committee at paragraph 3.24, there's a sort of brief overview there about the possibility of the priorities, commitments and eligibility and upper and lower limits if we did go down the route for area committee funding, and I'm happy to go through that if that is the case in more detail. Thank you.
Much appreciated, Wendy. Thank you. So before we go to the different elements, I have Ivor Hazlitt looking to speak, followed by the leader, Elaine Murray, looking to speak. So Ivor, please.
Chair, it was with regard to the key civic events. At the seminar, I asked a question with regard to Christmas lights and what we were getting because the contract had finished. I think officers were going to look into that. I may have missed an email that came out, so I don't know if that was reported back to us, just what the information was.
Thanks, Ivan. No, it hasn't been reported yet. We delegated that duty to Derek, and we will address that when we get to that particular aspect. I think that's page 19 or page 20, Ivor. So no, thanks for that, but we will come to that during the discussions about that. I think the £85,340 is the first agenda item, and then we'll come on to the key local priorities after that. Leader?
Thank you, Chair. I tend to favour the area committee process for the allocation of the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget. I think it is probably more equitable at a certain extent with PB. Organisations which are experienced are maybe good at campaigning to get support, whether other organisations may find it more difficult and in fact may be deterred because they don't feel able to rally the support to get them to vote. So I have some reservations around using the use of PB for this fund. That doesn't mean to say I'm opposed to PB or any such thing, but I just don't think this is necessarily the best fund to use it for. So my preference would be for it to be allocated by the area committees. However, I do note that in 3.12 it says should the area committee decide not to use PB, then the methodology outlined in the following paragraphs would also apply to this allocation. And that all then says the approval of small grants would be made by the discretionary budget lead officer in consultation with the ward members on a first come, first served basis. Now, I would be a bit concerned about funding for, even if it's small amounts of money of less than £1,000 being allocated just on a first come, first served basis, if it's money for tackling poverty and inequalities. And I think that there would need to be criteria for any grant which was allocated for tackling poverty and inequality, rather than just basically somebody comes up and says they want it. So I just wondered maybe Wendy or Derek could maybe explain a little bit more, if we opt to go for the area committee grant application process for tackling poverty and inequality, how would we assess the small grants in terms of how we would want that sort of money being allocated, and to ensure that organisations or individuals who actually have the greatest need get that, and should in fact that it not be done on a first come, first served basis, but rather applications considered during a window of application, if you like, and then allocated to those organisations who present the best case in terms of the intention of the fund.
Thanks very much for that, Leader. I have a great deal of sympathy with your view. I know that one of my wards in the highest one of the highest ISMD areas in Scotland, and they didn't get any funding simply because PB didn't work for them on the council PB process. So I'd be concerned of the same thing again, and I think probably disadvantaged because of the lockdown rather than anything else. So it was circumstances that caused that issue, maybe, rather than the quality of the service that particular group provide. And I'm also keen to see that somehow we make sure there's an equitable spread, and certainly in this particular year, given the unique situation or circumstances that prevail. So Derek, could you maybe answer the Leader's question, please? There is a concern that first come, first served doesn't actually address the need, or it maybe some delay would prevent some very good applications coming forward, and by the time they did, that money would be spent. So can you maybe help the Leader in that question that she posed, please?
Sure, Chair. Thanks very much, and thanks very much, Councillor Murray, as well, for that question. Yeah, the recommendation, it was based on how we administered the COVID-19 Renew and Restart funding in the previous budget allocation, where relatively small grants were available in a relatively quick turnaround period to get to those who were in most need. And we thought that would be quite a good process for smaller grants for those tackling poverty. There are a larger scale option within the recommendations as well for up to £5,000. And that would use your typical application process that Councillor Murray was sort of referring to there, where it would go through a proportionate scoring process with officers, and it would come back to members for final agreement based on those recommendations. It would ultimately be for members to determine if they wanted all applications to go through that, and they just set an upper limit, and projects can bid in for that, and they would all go through the same process. But within the recommendations, we were giving members the opportunity to consider getting funding out quicker to maybe those organisations that were tackling poverty and inequalities.
I think the point the leader was making was, would there be any reason why we could not set maybe a 6-week window for applications to be made, so that you have a group of applications and then you measure once against the other, rather than just individual applications being dealt with when they're submitted, because that might disadvantage some, because when the money is spent, the money is spent.
Yeah, if I could just come back, we were keen with the COVID money to get it out the door quickly. You're absolutely right. I didn't find the process particularly helpful, actually, because we were being asked, do you know anything about this organisation? Quite often you didn't know anything about the organisation, and if you didn't know anything, that suggested that they shouldn't get the money they got it. And I just wouldn't want that sort of mechanism to be used for money which should be tackling poverty and inequality. I think whatever, even if it was decided by the discretionary budget lead officer, I would want there to be criteria set by this committee as to who should get that money. So, because I really don't think that money should just be going out to whoever happens to want to ask for it.
Thanks, Derek. Wendy wants to offer some advice. I'll get Wendy and I'll get you back in, Derek. Wendy?
Great. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader, and thank you, Derek, as well. Just in relation to that, Leader, what we could do was, again, at 3.24, there's a sort of draft criteria that could be considered, for the area committee today. But if elected members wish to, we could organise a separate seminar, as we've done in previous years, to decide on the specific criteria, eligibility and priorities that the elected members might want to agree on for the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities funding of the 85,000. And we can also go into depth about the level of upper and lower limits at that seminar as well. I noted within 3.24, we're looking at the lower limit of 1,000 and upper limit of 5,000. Last year, if you'll remember, the Nithsdale Area Committee had an upper limit of £10,000 for single projects, £20,000 for larger scale projects. So there's a wee bit of difference there to last year. But again, it's up to the elected members what way they wanted to set that. And we could have a separate seminar if you wanted, or we could sort of discuss that today if members were minded to, depending on what way they wanted to take that forward, if that helps.
If it went to a seminar, I would have to come back here for a decision. The seminar couldn't make the decision. It would have to come back to the area committee, and that would mean a bit of a delay, I suppose. And when's the next area committee?
November.
No, well,
September.
Yes.
I think.
September, is it? I thought it was November. September,
right. Yeah. So that would actually delay getting the money out if we do it that way.
So we can maybe, Leader, if we manage to tease out a debate, we might even 3.24, we could maybe just expand on that. Derek, do you need to add to what Wendy had to say there?
No, Chair, I was just going to suggest what Wendy had put forward there. If members wanted to discuss it fuller, we could do that at a seminar and then bring recommendations back to this committee around criteria, eligibility and the funds. I'm conscious that this was allocated just in April from Communities Committee, so we didn't get a chance to discuss the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget specifically at the seminar, but we've based the report and the recommendations on the previous years when it did come through at area committees. But happy to take your lead, Chair.
Thanks, Derek. And I suppose, Tracy, if we did decide to have a seminar, would it be possible to convene a one agenda item meeting at short notice for Nithsdale Area Committee in June sometime? I know you won't be able to do that through checking the diary, but there would be an opportunity, supposing it was an afternoon or a Friday. Would that be right?
Yes, Chair. As the Chair, as long as you've been in discussions about having that meeting and you approve it, we just have to seek permission from the proper officer to get it put in the diary. But yeah, it's no problem to schedule a special meeting of the area committee.
Thanks, Tracy. So if we don't agree today, we will move to a seminar and then a special meeting to just agree what a system we apply when we've had the seminar and we've had a chance to debate this further. So without going to the discussion for a seminar at the moment, I suppose the first thing we have to decide is the allocation of £85,340. It seems to be the feeling of members that a grant application process would be the preferred option. Are there any members not content to use that system? If so, we'll need to go to some vote to decide what we actually do, or which system we employ anyway. So the proposal or suggestion is that we go to a grant application system. Does anyone have an alternative view? Okay, I don't see any alternative view, so I take it it's a unanimous decision that we go to a grant application process for the £85,340. So I think maybe we should just go through the rest of the paper and then go back and see if there is some way we can manage this application process for the Tackling Poverty and Inequality budget, but we'll do that last. If you don't mind waiting, Wendy, we'll just go through the rest of the process. You okay with that?
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay, so that's the recommendation 1 dealt with partially. Recommendation 2 is to note the strategic framework for the Area Committee Discretionary Budget are detailed in paragraph 314, 315 and Appendix 1. So if members are happy to note the strategic framework, we'll go on to recommendation 3. Note the Nithsdale Area Committee Discretionary Budget 2021 to 2022 of £179,647.71 and agree the 9 priority areas set out in paragraph 317. So that is Christmas festivities, Christmas lights, floral planting, Remembrance Armed Forces, signature events, key local facilities, Dumfries gift fund, twinning and COVID-19 renew and restart. And I know we've asked, or Ivor has asked about the Christmas lights, and we'll come back to that. We're just going to go through the recommendation, then we'll come back to the £85,000 and the Christmas lights. So recommendation 4 is to agree the key civic events and initiatives as referred to in paragraph, or referenced in paragraph 3.18, totaling £92,560 and set out in Appendix 2, and agree to invite expression of interest to deliver them as set out in paragraph 319 to 320, with the exception of the Christmas lights to be taken forward by our council. So members, if we can move to Appendix 2, please. It's on page 19. You will see the discretionary budget carried forward of £55,814.71. You will see the discretionary budget allocation £123,833. You will see the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget, which we've already discussed. So our budget is £264,987.71. We then go into the local priorities and the proposed allocation 2021 to 22. So the first one is the Christmas festivities to support community councils to deliver festive events in Kirkconnell, Sanquhar and Thornhill. This is an annual arrangement that works particularly well in all these communities, and the proposed allocation is £2,580. Are members content with that allocation and with that proposal?
Agreed.
If I don't hear anything to the contrary, I'll take that as an approval. We then move on to the Dumfries Christmas festivities, support community festive events in Dumfries, £5,830. And again, these are, I think I'm right, Derek, 2.7% uplift, is that right, from last year?
That's right, Chair. That's based on the discussions from the seminar, so for members to consider.
And that wasn't a decision, it was just simply a suggestion, and you've introduced it, so members are agreeing that. They're also agreeing that that figure represents a 2.7% increase. That's featured in your paper, in your report anyway, as long as members know that. That's so right. The Dumfries Christmas festivities, £5,830. If there's no dissent, I will take that as an agreement. Then come to the Christmas lights, provision of Christmas lights in Dumfries, Kirkconnell, Sanker and Thornhill, £57,000 560. And Ivor did ask, and I know we charged Derek to try and find enough information to allow us to make an informed decision whether or not we want to spend this level of money and what we would get for it. Have you had the opportunity yet, Derek, to speak to Rhodes and colleagues?
Yes, Chair, I did. I had a conversation with Rhodes colleagues. Unfortunately, without agreeing it, we do need to go through the procurement process, as you know, but without having a budget allocation, we were unable to go through that process. But there would certainly be an anticipated increase in expenditure from the previous year. Also to bear in mind, members, that what's detailed in Appendix 2 is for 1 year. Previously, we've had multi-year contracts, so a 3-year contract. So that's maybe something members want to consider, and that will have an impact on the level of budget that's required. Obviously, you get a better deal for a multi-year project. I did ask governance and finance colleagues if that was permitted, because I know that was also raised at the seminar, and there's nothing within the financial regulations that would prevent members agreeing a 3-year contract, as long as the funding is there to do that. And similarly, there was also a question about carrying money forward into future years. 1% was mentioned, but there's nothing within the financial regulations that would prevent members carrying any of their budget forward into future years. So apologies, Chair, we haven't got much more information on the actual Christmas lights contract. Officers suggested that they would need an indication of allocation before we could go through that procurement process.
Okay, so I suppose then we could move to the next stage without a commitment. The question, of course, then is, if you look at the very bottom of the page, we've only got a remaining balance £87,000 and 87 pence, or 87,087 pounds and 71 pence. That doesn't equate to another 2 years funding, so we don't have 3 years money to set aside or carry forward, and we don't know whether or not next year there will be a budget for discretionary spend in any of the future years. So it leaves us with a problem. I suppose you could do both. You could see what we could get for 1 year, although it seems to me something, and it's up to members, of course, not me, it seems to me something of a waste to go through all this process for 1 year to then come back and say, well, next year we're not putting these lights up. You would want some sort of security or knowledge that it'd be for a few years to make it worthwhile. I see Councillor Hazlitt wanting to come back in, Ivor.
Chair, was there no way that an officer could phone up the company we deal with and say, look, if we've got a similar budget to last year, what can you give us? Surely that would have been a simple question without committing to a contract, so that then we knew as a committee what we could get. Because if we're looking at it, I think is it about 40-odd thousand or something that goes to Dumfries and then the rest of the other towns for putting their lights up and down. You know, 40,000. Is it 3 candles at the mid steeple we'll get for that, or are we getting something similar to what we had last year? Because you know that would make my decision on whether we were doing something for the town simpler to take, rather than, oh well, actually you're getting a Christmas tree sign on 2 or 3 of the poles and that's it. That doesn't look good for your money. But it's just if we could have got some idea, and if I think the 3 years would be better, because you're going to get even less with your money unless you up your contribution, and then you know that would be something, another decision to take.
I think you're right, Ivor. I think, though, to be fair to officers, you can't go just speculating. Whenever a figure identified, and it was simple now for officers to go away and say, what can we get for £57,560 and compare that with what we got for the previous years and bring that back to members, and it would be on a 1 year contract or a 3 year contract, depending upon how attractive these figures were. And I don't think that would be unreasonable, and officers could report back in September that would still give us time to instruct the work and secure the contract before the November installation time. And I think it's only fair on officers that they have something to work with. You can't have them running about the country just asking how much you use for this. They've now got a figure. If members are content to go to the next stage, which will be officers going to...
Can I come in, Jim?
John Martin, yeah.
In the past, 4 years ago, we actually, there were four companies in there, and we gave them a rough idea of what we wanted with the decorations. They came back with four kind of promotional videos of what we could get with our money. It was much the same. They used the streets that we gave them, like, and they put that on, like, they put that on a video of what it would look like. And I think there were 3 or 4 of us as councillors were set up, and we picked the best one, what we thought was value for money. As I say, there were actually 4 different price levels, and we picked what we thought was the best for the money. And that's when we went with the 3-year one, because I think they guaranteed at the time, I'm not exactly sure about this, that the price would not increase over the next 3 years. And that's how it was done the last time. As I say, we had to pick out one of the contractors, but we actually got 4 different scenarios of what we could get for our money off these contractors that were bidding, the companies that were bidding for the contract.
That's fine, John. If Derek can do that, that would be absolutely fine. I think Blashear was the company we eventually used. So and I'm sure we would have to get a competitive pricing anyway. So that would just be a standard process. So if members are happy to ring fence that budget, subject to further information and the decision being made in September, I think we could move forward on that basis. If there's any alternative view, please let me know. If no, we'll ring fence £50,560, £57,560, and task Derek to work with Roads colleagues to bring us estimates on a 1-year and a 3 or 4 year contract, and let members see what we're going to get for our money for each of the 4 communities or 4 settlements. All right,
Chief,
Derek?
can I just seek some clarity on that? I'm understanding you that we're looking to allocate the 57,560 as recommended. For the 1 year, are you looking to use the remaining, or what's potentially going to be the remaining balance, to get an idea of what we could get over a 3-year period if the total was then 144,647, or are you just looking to get a 3-year reducing rate?
No, I think given that we're looking to be sitting on the remainder £85,340, that we would get that figure for the 3 years, and then you'd report back to committee. I see Ronnie Nicholson wanting to speak. Ronnie, can you come in, please? You're muted, Ronnie.
No, that was the same question, Jim. That's fine.
Thanks, Ronnie. Okay. So provided we agree all the figures that Derek's presented to us, these are the 2. Oh, David McKean and John Martin.
Sorry, just on the thing, you better make sure that you're not leaving it, September's not leaving it too short, because I think the last times it was June or July we had to actually pick. That's what they set up. There were 1 person for each group that decided. We told the companies they got the price, and they showed us what we could get for the price. And as I say, there were 3 or 4 of us, for one for more or less each group was there, and we selected the one that we thought was the best. We got the best bang for our bucks, like. But as I say, you better make sure that September's not too late to get these to get the designs and that made up.
Well, if that's the case, can members agree today, as an extra recommendation in the papers, that as soon as Derek gets the information, he convenes a small working group of 1 person from each political group to decide on the Christmas lights and simply report back? That would mean, of course, you'd be delegating authority to 4 people to spend £144,000, whatever it might be, because if we decide that the best value is a 3-year commitment, members need to be aware in advance that the small group of people could potentially spend all of the budget on Christmas lights. If members are not content with that, I'm happy to have a special meeting for this as well. John Martin?
If I remember right to the last time, it was very difficult to get a 1-year decision, and that's how it was. Most the companies that put in the tender, it was more or less for a 3-year. The reason we got it for a year last year was because we used the same lights that we used the 3 previous years.
No, I know that. We had a 3-year lease and then we extended it for a year to allow us to get to this stage today. So
what I'm saying is, Jim, you may not get a 1-year lease.
Yeah, which is fine, John. Aye, that's right, and that's what Derek's tasked to do. So I've got Ivor wanting to come back in and then Leader. Ivor?
Chair, it's just if we allocate for 3 years and use that remaining balance, does that mean to say that we're not doing any of the work over the page in page 20? Because that would have to come out the remaining balance. And I would think there's things in there that I might support rather than, and take the risk that we get money next year for area committee.
Okay, then in that case, I'll either come in and then we'll abandon this at the moment. We'll deal with all the rest and then we'll come back to revisit this as well. Leader, you're last on this, and I'm going to go to the next spend. Leader, please.
I think I would be a bit anxious about. I don't even know if it would be appropriate for a small group of people to make a budgetary decision. I think it would have to come back to area committee to actually make that decision. But that wouldn't be impossible, because if we are going to look at criteria for the tackling poverty budget, and that's coming back to a special meeting, then surely this could also come back to a special meeting if the work could be done, in a short enough period of time. Because from what John Martin's saying, is that we probably would have to make that decision in June anyway. So I don't think that would necessarily prevent us from doing making a decision. But I would have anxiety about a small group of people taking that decision about the area committee funding for the next 3 years.
No, that's fine, Leader. Just a suggestion, because we can do delegated authority. Members will be aware in advance what we're doing, but that's fine. We'll stop that discussion at the moment and tidy up all the rest, and then we'll go back to the discretionary, the inequality budget, and then the lights. So the next one is Nithsdale in Bloom, floral displays, plants and flower baskets across Nithsdale, £20,820. Are members content with that?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Nithsdale Sports Grant, support for local athletes that would not otherwise receive any financial help, and to assist groups and individuals reach the sporting goals. £5,770. Are members content with that?
Agreed.
Has that been used before, Chair?
It was spent every year, and as far as I understand, it was spent this year, but Ivor can tell us, because I think he used to serve in the Sports Council. Ivor?
It's not him we're paying, is it?
Pardon?
No.
It's not him we're paying, is it?
No. Well, we'll need to take it back.
No, I think it's delivered through Active Schools or Nithsdale Active Sports or whatever it is now, because the Sports Council isn't there.
Oh, okay. So it was spent last year. It was committed last year, Ivor? Oh, Derek's nodding his head, so it was spent last year. That's fine. Right, members. Now, the next is the tackling poverty. The 40,000 and 45,000. We've got to leave that for the moment, members, if you don't mind, and turn over the page. So we're now on page 20, and these are some of the projects that were identified as priority projects by the Nithsdale Area Committee, and there's an explanation from Derek as to why the money's no in the committed project, page 19. So the first one's Remembrance Armed Forces Day. That's because this year the council have decided to make a contribution to every war memorial in the region, and therefore that frees up £1,850 that would have been committed. In my view on this, and I don't know how members agree or no, I would want to see us commit that money and then return it to the budget on the basis that it's not required this year. And in that way, it doesn't find itself in a separate page and somehow to be considered of a lesser value. And I know that's not what Derek's saying in his report, but if we commit it and then take it back, we still finish up with the same total and don't need to spend it this year, but it features as a commitment and then a return rather than just an acknowledgement that it's not required this year. Councillor McKee?
Are you saying somebody else is providing the wreaths for this year?
Yes, the council itself, the Dumfries and Galloway Council, have decided that every wreath, we're the only region, or we're the only ward that does every war memorial. Some other wards do just a few of the key war memorials in the major settlements. So yes, this year, Dumfries and Galloway Council's picking up this budget joke. Nothing will change other than who pays the bill. I think it's Communities Committee that's paying the bill this year for every war memorial in Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you.
So that's just my suggestion, members. We actually commit the money and then take it back on the basis that it's not required, so it features in the budget, and then I suppose it's the same thing. I didn't want it to seem that these 5 projects have a lesser value than any others. We simply don't need the money this year. So next one's Dumfries Giffhorn Twinning. It would have been £3,570, but we've already had notification that there'll be no twinning activities this year. And again, I know that's something we've been very supportive of in previous years, and I would hope that would continue. So I suppose, are members content that we continue to support armed forces for £1,850 every year? Or this year anyway?
Yep.
Agreed.
Agreed.
And are we content to support the twinning organisation at £3,570? I don't get any dissent. The next one's the riding of the marches. The Good Neighbours and Sanka riding of the marches. Both organisations have cancelled the normal events, and the budget would have been £12,090. Are we content to continue to support these 2 organisations?
Agreed.
Thank you. The next one is one that, again, Derek was going to find out some additional information. This is maybe what Ivor's talking about. We did intend to support the arts, culture and heritage, and we were keen to await further clarity on how best to support key facilities through 2021. The indicative budget would be £20,560 for 2021-22 if allocated. Derek, do you have any further information for members on how this might be funded or addressed?
Yes, Chair, we had a discussion previously, I think it was at last year's seminar, around aligning this particular budget with the cultural strategy that was being developed by our council. Now, unfortunately, that piece of work has not been finalised yet, just due to the COVID situation and doing a proper consultation. There was a draft of the cultural strategy produced, but I think members were keen that we waited for the formal strategy to be adopted by Communities Committee before determining whether they wanted to invest this significant amount of money to try and achieve the outcomes of that strategy across Nithsdale. So we haven't really fleshed that one out much further than that, Chair.
Okay, that's fine, Derek. And I suppose we would need to have the strategy to be ordered in order to identify which organisations would best fit with that strategy and therefore receive support. So is there an indicative timeline for that to be developed?
I've not had an updated time frame. The last I heard, they were going to be reviewing it in April past, so I can certainly check in with officers when that is due, if that is the route members wish to underpin this particular budget.
It'd be really helpful if indeed, and it looks more likely as we discuss on what we're going to do, that we'll have a meeting in June. So maybe we could report back in June, and if we have resources remaining and the strategy has been developed to a stage where we can identify priority projects, then that'd be an ideal opportunity to do that. So are members happy to commit £20,560 to the cultural strategy?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. And the last one's the COVID-19 renew and restart, and members were keen to await further clarity on how best to support organisations through 2021. The indicative budget would be £19,020. Is that in addition to the other two budgets that we have across the page, Derek, with £40,000 and £45,000 because it may, oh, it is, of course it's different. The other one's poverty, yes. So are members keen to simply identify that budget, or do members want to actually use that budget, given especially the situation we find ourselves in this week, where restrictions have been relaxed quite considerably and lots of activities are now taking place that couldn't have taken place just a few weeks ago? If we do, we have £19,000 and £20 to remove from the £87,087.71. So it would leave us with just £67,000 roughly. Are members keen to commit £19,000 and £20 to renew and restart, or do we want to leave that to June? I don't see any reason why we should, but
I'd like to leave it to June, Chair, to see exactly what happens to these groups when they're setting up again, and if they're coming across difficulties where we can help them. Otherwise, we'd just keep the money and it's there if necessary.
Okay, it seems a back to front thing, Joe. You need to understand what groups are needing help before you can get it, but and the only way to do that is to speak to them. But I'm happy if that's what members are content to do. We simply identify that £19,000 and £20 and don't spend it, and get a further report in June on how that might be used.
I think if the groups are setting up, it's only a few weeks until June that the officers can get the information required, and they can come back to us and we agree then whether we fund them or not.
I don't think that's quite how it works, Joe. You need to invite applications, you need to speak to groups. You can't have groups, just odd random groups contacting the council for money. That's my concern. I think we did £1,000 maximum last year so that we could support 19 groups in Nithsdale to set up, but we need to make them aware that that money was available, and we need to have a process for dispersing it. And I suppose it comes back to the point the leader made earlier, that we don't just want to get to the first 19 that come forward, but we want to make sure that we get best value, if you like, for our £19,000. So I'm in members' hands as to how we actually do this, whether we instruct Derek to invite applications, and it might be that we set a criteria and we decide in June, or we allocate just simply, we delegate authority to Derek to either spend the money in consultation with ward members again, or whether we have a new process that guides Derek and how best we want to spend that money. But again, I'm in members' hands. I've had a suggestion from Councillor McKee, we leave it for a month until June, although we still have a mechanism to put in place to spend that money. The alternative is just not to use it this year and use it for poverty and inequality funding, and that would add an extra £20,000 into that kitty, and it may be that's a more appropriate spend than renew and restart, but up to members. Leader?
I think personally I'm in favour of still having some funding to help organisations to restart, because I think that the issues will be there as were there last time, and hopefully, I mean, to a certain extent last time things restarted and then they all closed again, so didn't necessarily fulfil the function we wanted it to do. But I would still be in favour of having funding available. But I do think that, again, that there need to be more criteria around it than there were last time, that it was just a bit of a free-for-all. Organisations which are quick off the mark got in there and got the money. So if we are actually looking at criteria for the poverty and tackling poverty and inequalities funding, we could at a seminar consider the criteria for this fund as well. And and have it coming back fairly rapidly to the area committee for a decision.
Sounds fine with me, Leader. I've got Councillor Hislop, Ivor.
Happy to agree what the Leader proposed.
Okay, so on that basis then we're having a seminar, Derek. We're having a seminar to sort out the criteria for the grant funding to support tackling poverty and inequalities, and we're having the same seminar to discuss the COVID. And if there's information on the Christmas lights, you can bring that as well. That'll then allow the committee to make all these decisions in June. So we still need then, so at that, does that mean, members, that we don't need to discuss the recommendations that Derek has provided us, where applications up to £1,000 are determined by grant application process, and the £5,000 one, because that will be, it'll not be decided at the seminar, but Derek will be guided at the seminar how best members would like to see that worked, and that will come to a meeting in June. Does that sound reasonable?
Are we taking a decision this morning, Chair, around whether we're doing the tackling poverty and inequalities budget by participatory budgeting or the grant application process? Has that already been agreed?
That's been agreed. So by no dissent, it's been agreed that it will be a grant application process.
Right, so the seminar is to discuss that process.
The seminar will discuss the process, and it'll also discuss the process for the COVID-19 Renew and Restart programme.
Yeah.
And the last thing, given the uncertain nature of the amount of money that's remaining, you have been asked to investigate the Christmas lights funding for a 1 year, if such a thing's possible, and a 3-year arrangement, contract, lease, call it what you will, and you'll report that back hopefully to the seminar, but certainly back to members in June for a decision. So we have not committed any money. So as far as I can understand today, John Martin wants to come back in. John?
No, it was just on the Christmas lights. I maybe didn't make myself very clear. As I say, the money, when they put in for the contracts to see what they could get, the money had actually been agreed then. So they had a ballpark figure of how much they told the contractors they were willing to spend on the lights. All the as I say, it was 3 or 4 members did was when the designs come back, they chose the design much the same as they had the competition for 3 different for the schools for designing some of the lights, and it was the same 3 members or 4 members that decided on what designs had won to go up as lights. But as I say, they had no decision on how much money or spending the money. That had already been agreed. It was only the design that they were choosing, the design and what they had come back from the contractors. There were no spending of the money.
Aye, I think what we're saying today is we have told Derek that we have £57,000 for 1 year, and we have 144 for 3 years, and that's a discussion he will have, but he won't commit. He will just come back to us and say, this is what you can get for your money. So it's just a discussion, but it's a discussion based around an exact figure.
The problem, why we changed it, why we just made it a few members, we didn't, it was 19 or 20 members was it at the time. They weren't wanting arguments between 19 and 20 members of what designs they wanted, etc. That's how they set up a small group. No, we
can still do that. All we're trying to do is establish what we can get for our money, and if members agree, then we can get down to the detail about what kind of picture we want or what kids want to make up. We just want to know, and I think Ivor made a point, if £57,000 gets us 2 Christmas lights and 2 two sets of Christmas trees, it's no real value for money. But if we can get a decent offer from one of these companies, then it's something that we'll consider in June, and that'll give us time to get it on place before November when they're normally installed. So we're not asking Derek to commit to anything, we're just giving him a ballpark figure to go to the company and say, this is for 1 year, this is for 3, what can you give us? And he'll report back, and if it's no satisfactory, then need to have a rethink. But it's simple information gathering, for want of a better word. So we can go back to that. So we've got the Christmas festivities agreed at £2,580. We've got the Dumfries Christmas festivities at £5,830. We've got Nithsdale in Bloom at £20,820. Nithsdale Sports Grants at £5,770, and that will be a total minus £57,000, and Derek will give us that. We've then got, I'll stop because Jeff Lever wants to speak. Jeff?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's regarding the contract. I don't see why this is any different in terms of negotiating a multi-year contract from what we did last time. You know, we've always assumed we were going to carry it on year after year. What's different this year from what it was 4 years ago?
I think we agreed a 3-year contract at that time with a 1-year option.
Yes, but we weren't using any reserves to back it, were we? We just assumed the money would be there in the subsequent years.
Aye, but if we enter into a 3-year contract, that's a legal contract, legally binding, and someone will have to find the money somewhere. And I wouldn't want to get into a discussion today about contracts, etc., etc. This is simply a request to the officer to go and find out some figures for us, and when it comes back with that, we will decide what we want to do or what we should do next. Ronnie Nicholson, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think Jeff's got a good point there as well. I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't actually ask, you know, as part of the discussions with contractors, that if the funding is available, we could actually say we ring fence money if there's funding available for the possible option of a 3-year contract. And if that happened, would the contractors be happy with that? You know, if that funding was there available in the next 3 years, but we could actually make a decision to, you know, to ring fence money if they were available in the future years. So you could bring that as another option. You know, what I'm saying is, you don't need to close that door without actually, you know, and you could still be committing that money that you've said, the other 87,000, as a 3-year contract with the money you've got. Plus, the other option is if you know, if they come back with some figures on the possibility of a 3-year option, and you could negotiate with them that if ring fence, we could make a decision on ring fencing the money. And if the money was available to these contractors, what would be the costs?
Thanks, Ronnie. I think that's what we've said, and I think what Derek's got to do is come back and tell us how much it's got to cost, and then we'll look in our piggy bank and see how much we've got and see if these figures marry up. And if we enter into a contract, we'll need to make sure with governance assurance that the funding can be carried forward and that the council has the money to hand to meet any financial commitment we might want to make. And that'll be decided in June. We'll discuss it at a seminar when we get the opportunity to do that, and then we'll make a decision in June on what's the phraseology, the best or the most information we have available to us. We're only speculating at the moment. So Derek will get exact figures, what the financial arrangement will be, whether or not we can have a rolling programme or whether the contractor will want a fixed 3-year term, and then we'll discuss what we can or cannot do on the basis of the information Derek gives us. So if members are content with that, Derek, and we'll go back to the recommendations in a minute and tidy it all up. Are we happy to commit tackling poverty and inequalities £40,000 and the mechanism sorted out between the seminar and when we get to committee in June? If there's no dissent, that's what we've done. The Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Larger Project Fund, 45,340. Again, seminar to discuss how we set up the criteria and the decision made in June. And we're also committing, Derek, so this will reduce the available budget anyway, we're committing £19,020 for Renew and Restart. That will go back into a commitment we've made, and that will be decided in June after a discussion at the seminar. And the other 4 projects, in your report you'll feature it, please, that we support all of these 4 projects, and we acknowledge that we would have committed the funds, but they no need this particular year, and that way they'll remain a key priority of this committee going forward. So Wendy, it looks like I've asked you to hang about and there are no decisions to make, but maybe you'll be part of the seminar team to help us through the discussion and decision-making process. Derek will be there, Liz if she wants, Fiona if she wants, and find a date in the diary at the earliest opportunity. Wendy, do you want to add something?
Yep, of course, Chair. I'd be happy to attend and provide any additional guidance at that time. And I can also send out the criteria that we've used for the last year, just to guide members in terms of what they maybe want to think about for this year as well. But I'm very happy to attend and help. Yep, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Wendy. That's really helpful. Members, anything anybody wants to add to that? If no, we'll go to the recommendations. So, recommendation number 1, note the allocation of £85,340 to the Nithsdale Area Committee from the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget, and agree its allocation is to be by a grant application process, subject to a seminar and a further meeting to determine how the money is distributed, and that meeting will be held sometime in June. 2.2, note the strategic framework for the area committee discretionary budget as detailed in paragraph 3.14 to 3.15 and appendix 1. Happy to note that. 2.3, note the Nithsdale area committee discretionary budget 2022 of £179,647.71 and agree the 9 priority areas as set out in paragraph 317, and we've done that. Agree the key civic events and initiatives as referenced in paragraph 3.18 totalling £92,560 and set out in appendix 2, and agree to invite expressions of interest to deliver them as soon as set out in paragraph 319, 320, with the exception of the Christmas lights, which will be a subject of further investigation and a discussion at the seminar in June. Agree a grant application process for the remaining £87,087.71 as set out in paragraphs 321 to 3.23 at a future seminar and decision in June. And 2.6, subject decision at 2.1, and a grant application process will be determined in June, subject to a member seminar in advance of that meeting.
Great.
Everybody happy with that? Members, thank you very much for your input and indulgence. Thank you, Wendy, for being with us. It's really nice to see you. Thanks very much, Derek, for your help. It's been very helpful. And we'll see you in June, and then at a special meeting of the Nithsdale Area Committee in June to decide the poverty and inequality budget, the COVID-19 Renew and Restart, and Christmas lights, and any other urgent business that there might be that come up in the meantime. Thanks very much, folks, for your attendance today.
Thanks, members.
Thanks, folks. Members, we're going to agenda.
Thanks,
Wendy. We're going to agenda item number 5. The disposal of land at 5 Birkenau A, Village of A, report by Head of Economy and Development. Our second report is for disposal of land at 5 Birkenau A. Nick Lane is on team. Should members have any queries? Members, oh, hi to Nick. It's good.
Good morning, everyone.
John Martin, we're not making a decision on seminars. That will be advice to the officer, advice to inform the officer's recommendation in the area committee in June. And if I didn't make that clear, I'm sorry about that. That was certainly my intention. We don't make decisions at seminars, but we guide officers or offer information and advice on how we want to see matters being progressed. So it'll be a seminar for discussion only, and the officer will bring a report in June for us to decide how to disperse the varying budgets that we have decided to reserve until then. Sorry about that, Nick. Just a member was just clarifying about seminars, and we don't make decisions at seminars, and that's quite clear. So you've got 3 items, Nick. The first is the disposal of land at 5 Birkie now in the village of A. And members are asked to note the size, note the groups that have been consulted, and advise you if there are any further groups members wish to consult with regarding the potential community use. Nick, do you have anything to say or add to your report?
Nothing other than the fact that we got nothing. We received no comment from the Community Council and the A Primary School Parent Council.
Thanks, Nick. One member did ask, although it's no part of the report, why the remainder of the land isn't also included in it. It looks like it's green open space.
It's public open space. The occupants of number 5 were quite clear they only wanted a narrow strip to improve their access to their house. It sits on a corner, so it's maybe not suitable for development. But if in future we decided that it maybe could be used for something else, we'd certainly bring it before members.
Okay. So members, we're being asked to note the size of the area of land that the council proposed to dispose of. There's been no responses from the statutory consultees. Are there any other community groups that members feel should be consulted in this? I'll take silence as I know. Or Councillor McKay?
Could you seek clarity on the drawing we've got? There's an area outlined in black. Is that the piece of land you're talking about? And is that what the owners of, or the residents in number 5 would be looking to take over?
That's correct. The owners of number 5 approached us to buy this thin strip of land so they can get their car off the street, and I think they probably will build a garage at some point, but they didn't say that at the time. But the area outlined in black is the area that we're talking about.
And the rest of the green open space, Jock, and it's identified as that, and as Nick says, if we have any reason to want to dispose of it later, it'll come back to members anyway.
I'd be quite happy for the residents to get that piece of land. Wouldn't have any problem with that.
Very good. And that's the due process we're going through today. So on that basis, then, are we happy to note that 34 square metres of land at 5 Birkie now A is surplus to council requirements, and that's featured on the appendix on page 23? Are we happy to note that community councils and groups listed at paragraph 3.5 in this report have been consulted with regard to potential community uses? And it seems there is no advice on any further groups, and on that basis, members, we're just happy to note that the process has been concluded.
Chair, sorry to butt in again. Could we suggest that we give that piece of land to the residents of number 5 at the cost of £1?
No.
Oh, 50
No,
pence.
No,
It's a ransom. It's a ransom. Why would you be doing such a thing, Joe? You got to start offering council land away for £1.
It's just that strip they want for their car, access to their house.
It's probably worth a couple of £1,000 to him. That gets a strip of land in a garage.
they've made us a very good offer.
Open a can of worms.
It's madness, that. We do that with constituted community groups that are charities, but the council itself is not a charity.
You could fool me in some aspects.
Well, but that'll not be one of them, Joe. Right, so that's that done. That's agreed. So, or noted anyway. So the next agenda item is agenda item 6. This is disposal of pavilion, garden and car park, Kingham Park, Kingham Road, Dumfries. It's for the disposal of the pavilion, garden and car park at Kingham Park, and it's what Alistair Johnson says, but by you, Nick, I take it, is it?
Actually, my colleague Andrew is going to speak to this.
All right. There is a question. Again, we are only being asked to endorse this. Oh, I was going to say there's a question, but Leader's coming in to ask her own question. Leader, please.
This is common good land, as it says in the report. And when it was disposed of to the Bruce Trust, it was the Common Good Committee which examined the proposals and agreed to recommend, I think, the transfer of the land. I'm just a bit concerned in agreeing these recommendations. Are we then just agreeing that the land is sold, or this is sold off, without actually going back to the Common Good Committee? Because I think, as I say, this is common good land, and surely it's up to the Common Good subcommittee to consider any disposal of the property. And also that if it was disposed of, then presumably if it commanded, if there was a receipt in respect of the disposal of this land, it would go to the Common Good and not to the council.
That's correct. The capital receipt for that property would go to the Dumfries Common Good Fund. It wouldn't go to the council.
So what would be?
Clarify that, Andrew.
Yeah, I can clarify that.
Yeah, and it's also what the role of the Common Good subcommittee now is in terms of any disposal. Would that go back to the Common Good subcommittee?
I'm not sure if it would or not. I'll check the disposal process for that. And if it is within the disposal process that we need to take that back to the Dumfries Common Good Committee, then a report would be submitted for their consultation for that. So I'll check and see what the disposal process states for that, whether it needs to go back to the Dumfries Common Good Committee.
And can you just clarify again, Andrew, the receipts for that piece of land, if it's sold, would go to the Common Good? Is that what you're saying? Yeah,
well, it's Common Good land. Yes, it was acquired. Oh, hold on a second. It was acquired. Hold on a second. Got the report here. Just bear with me a moment. By virtue of a disposition, Principal Secretary of the State of War Department in favour of the Province Magistrates Councillors of the Royal Borough of Dumfries. So that's classed as common good. In 1929. So it meets the criteria for common good land property.
Okay, I can see this. I mean, members, remember that we're not being asked to consider this. Our role is just to note the size, note the people that have been consulted, which is quite considerable in this, and then advise if further groups are to be considered. So I've got Ryan Nicholson and then Ivor Hislop, please.
Yeah, I think the leader's right to ask the question, because we have been in a position before regarding the land that we sold off or we sort of gave away to DGHP when we sold it. And then that was common good land, but then, you know, any monies didn't, because they didn't take up the offer and that, there's no monies went to common good. I think it was a bit of a mess with the common good status. But my question is, well, it's actually a clarification. There has been a story in the press regarding this piece of land and the building for the Medieval Bruce Heritage Trust. When he seems to be implying that the council forced them to pull out because of the time limit clause that was put in for them to get things going and get funding. And my recollection was completely different for that. You know, it wasn't that. Then we don't know. I don't know. Did the Medieval Bruce Trust actually ask for an extension of time, which I'm quite sure would have been forthcoming, or is this just a story in the press that's having to go at the council for pushing them within that time limit? Because that's what appears in the press.
Not that I'm aware of. In the part of the report, they were given until the end of, I think it was the end of December 2020, and they came back to us in July 2020 saying that they weren't going ahead of it. And if it wasn't the case, you know, if they needed more time, then the report would have been submitted to the Dumfries Common Good Committee for that.
That was my understanding, Andrew. But you know, in the press, it doesn't look like that. It looks as if it was the council that pushed them on that time limit. But anyway, thanks for that clarification. Just as I thought it was.
Thanks, Ronnie. Councillor Haslop, Ivor.
Chair, St Michael's Cricket Club operate off the Kingham. Is there anything that they might want from the pavilion? So it might be worthwhile contacting them.
Yeah, I can certainly consult with the St Michael's Cricket Club to get their views if they were interested in the property and the land that's associated with it.
Thanks. And although it's not a recommendation, Andrew, you're going to go to the Dumfries Common Good and speak to them again now that it's a disposal, a general disposal, rather than to a particularly a group that was supported, followed by the funds going to the common good if and when it's sold. Ronnie Nicholson wants to come back in. Ronnie, and then John.
Yeah, it was just on that point. I'm maybe speaking about the wrong piece of land with the car park and that, but there is, you know, plots of land there that's been let out, but you know, by the council, and I think the car park, I think it's the same bit that is used by people, you know, tending that plots of land. Is that correct?
That's correct. You know, I know the area quite well, and I know that is used by dog walkers. People parking their car there, so if we do dispose of it, people need to be made well aware of it, that people use that for car parking and for dog walking, and it's been used like that for a good number of years, as far as I can remember.
So is there a condition then that, or sorry, not a condition, does that mean that by default we've provided free car parking and it wouldn't be used, or can it be used for anything else?
Well, we could. The thing is you'd have what you call prescriptive rights of access.
Aye.
It's, you know, they've been using it for over 20 years and nobody's ever objected to people parking the cars there over that time. It's, you know, it's quite a well used facility, and whenever I've been down and inspected the property, there's been people parking the cars there and taking their dogs for a walk along the path. So, you know, any sale would have to make people aware that, you know, that people have a right to use that for car parking. That's fine,
Andrew, and that'll be between the council legal team and whoever the purchaser is anyway. John Martin?
It's just a notice on the list of the consultees we've consulted. A live radio is there. Did he consult Dumfries? Did he consult Dumfries Community Radio? I think they're quite happy at Crichton, but did we consult with them?
I'm not sure, but if they're not on the list, I will send them an email to see if they're interested in the property.
They're not on the list at the moment, Andrew.
Right, well, in that case, I'll drop them an email. What are they called? Dumfries Community?
Dumfries Community Radio, DC.
Right.
It's more like an online radio station at present.
Yep.
Thanks for that, John. Councillor McKee?
Other than the cricket, is there no sports down there at all now? There used to be football pitches on that site, but they moved to the field around the corner, around past the houses, and there was football pitches, or at least one football pitch in there. Are they not used now at all?
They're using McLeod Pavilion.
I think there is a lease. It was with the St Michael's Cricket Club. They built a pavilion and they used those facilities there, but I'm not too sure about the actual football ground. It's further along there.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other members, then we're asked to note 34 square metres of land. Oh no, that's the wrong yin. Western Oak King Pavilion, Garden and Car Park Kingham. It's surplus to council requirements. Note the community councils and groups listed in paragraph 37 of this report have been consulted with regard to potential community uses, and you've been advised the two other organisations to consult with Andrew.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take Councillor Nicholson's advice and no speak when a meeting is going. Thanks very much, Andrew. We come to agenda item number 7, disposal of land at corner of Newton Road and Iron Grey Road, Dumfries. Nick Lane is here again. We have to note that 52.4 square metres of land at Newton Road, Iron Grey, Dumfries surplus to council requirements. Note the community councils and group listed in 3.5 have been consulted and advised with any further groups members wish to consult with. Nick, have you anything to add to this report?
No, not really. Just again, we had no responses back from the groups that we did contact.
Thanks, Nick. Councillor McKee?
I've had difficulty identifying that piece of land, Nick, actually. My understanding is that one of the neighbours there maintains the banking from their gate right down to that corner.
Uh-huh.
Now, are they cutting that? Are they maintaining that corner? Or is that the rough land that's at beside the fence for the other house? But basically, my question would be, Nick, is it worthwhile talking to the neighbours, either one of them, and ask them if they would be willing to take over that piece of land? Because it's good for, as far as I can see, it's good for nothing.
No, the occupant of 1 Newton Drive again has offered the going rate for this sort of land. Excuse me.
Joe.
So he will fence that and look after that area of land himself. It'll become his property. He's currently built a garage right up to the edge of that, and it's to give him more space to maintain the garage and get round the back of it.
And I think, Joe, all of these reports, they come because we have an expression of interest. So somebody's actually wanting them. I think that's how these reports come before us. So you should know in advance that somebody has offered, and I presume if they're sort of odd bits, they'll just be in agreement with the person that wants to purchase, and if they're more significant, they'll go in the open market. Would that be right, Nick?
That's right, and there's a third option that if, say, there was an adjoining house next door and it wasn't clear who would get the most benefit from it, we would ask those two parties to to tender for it.
Aye.
So there's 3 things you can do there.
And the process is well rehearsed and well sorted. So that's okay, members. So we've noted, and there are no other community groups to advise. So that's great, Nick. That's our business with you today, and Andrew concluded. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us.
Thank you.
And that I have no other business, members, but the next committee should be on the 8th of September. However, before that happens, we will now have a seminar to discuss 3 items on the agenda to do with discretionary budget, goodness me, poverty and inequality, COVID-19 renew and recovery, and Christmas lights. These are discussion seminars, or a discussion seminar, and then we'll have a special meeting convened in June to decide on how these matters will be progressed. Is your hand a historic one, Councillor McKee, or do you want back in?
No, I'd like to come back in, Chair. I'm just thinking about, you're talking about 2 meetings. Would it be practical or possible to hold them on the same day, one after the other? And that would save a lot of inconvenience to people. And hopefully in that time of year, the sun will start to shine and members will be able to get out and share it.
I think it wouldn't be wise, because officers will need time to write the report based on discussions around the seminar, because we don't make decisions at seminars. So officers will need to go and take away the suggestions we've made, and then bring a report back and we'll still need to decide. So it'll also give members time when the report comes out to reflect on the recommendations or recommendation that's being made. And I think that the simplest thing is to suit, much as it might be a nuisance, 2 separate meetings. I would kind of hope that they wouldn't be very long, because we'll have thrashed out today. Derek and Wendy will have a lot of information away on how we want to see things taken forward. The seminar will conclude that, and hopefully will be very brief, and you'll get out into the sunshine within a very short space of time after we meet, hopefully, Councillor McKee. But it looks like 2 meetings, whether we like it or no. It's only fair and officers that they get time to go away and reflect on the views that are expressed at the seminar.
You're so kind, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, Joe. On that happy note then, ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for being with us today. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing you at the seminar and at the next area committee sometime in June. Thanks, Tracy, as well, for organising that. Hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.